Well, comrades, this is a question in the minds of many, many people. And I would say our starting point has to be that millions of people hope that the answer to that question is yes. There's a massive fight back against austerity and the rise of the far right in Greece. So people are involved in struggle, and they're hoping that Syriza will win the next general election and lead Greece out of this cycle of crisis and austerity. Last week, to give you an example of the continuing struggle in Greece, there was a big strike called by the Confederation of Unions in the public sector. That includes the civil service, hospitals, teachers, local authorities. It was a very successful strike with big rallies in most cities throughout Greece. In Athens, the rally was led by the women cleaners of the Ministry of Finance, who have been fighting back against redundancies for almost a year now. And they are permanently camped at the entry of the finance ministry. So they led the demo, and that meant that the demonstration was very militant. People were very happy that they were being led by these women that had become a symbol of the fight back in Greece. There are, at the same time, there's a strike going on by migrant land workers in Sparta, of all places, one of the most conservative regions in Greece. They're on strike because they're not being paid, but their main demand is that they should be given papers. The legalization of migrant workers, and they have the support of the women cleaners. One of the most moving moments of last week, when was a delegation of migrant workers from the strawberry fields that were attacked last year went to the camp of the women cleaners, and the two delegations held a press conference declaring support for each other. Now, women cleaners in support of migrant workers whom they never knew. Most of them hardly have any names. They are illegal people. This was an exciting development. And it is because of developments like that the other big item in the news last week, apart from the strike, was a victory for the anti-fascist movement. The acting leader of Golden Dawn, because the actual leader is in jail since last autumn, but his deputy was out and about until last week. Last week, he was sent to jail too. So when we say thousands of people are on the move and full of hope that change will come in Greece, this is true. And one of the reasons, the first of the reasons, is the scale of the crisis in Greece. This has been massive. Now, Greece is still in recession for the 6th consecutive year. The recession started in 2008, and it went really deep in 2009, 2010, and it's still continuing. We are not out of the recession. It has hit people really hard. There's official figures for unemployment, and they always cheat. There's more unemployed people than actually are recorded by the statistical service. It's up to 1.5 million. That's in a country with a population of 11 million. It's huge. Plus, people who are at work, it's estimated about 1 million people who have jobs are not being paid. The bosses are keeping their pay for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months in arrears. So effectively, this is another whole layer that's being hit very hard by the recession. And even people with regular jobs face continuous attacks. Collective agreements are not being implemented, so wages, conditions, working conditions are continuously under attack. So no wonder people are fighting back. The conditions are terrible. But the fight back also is impressive. You probably, most of you know that we've had 30 general strikes since the recession started. From 2009 to today, there have been 30 days of general strike in Greece. To understand why the fight back has been on such a big scale, it's not just because of the crisis, it's also the fighting tradition of the working class in Greece. It's only 40 years since the Polytechnic uprising that led to the end of the junta, the military junta, back in 1974. So people who were part of that struggle are still around, and many people have in the family, their parents or their grandparents now were involved in those struggles. And that tradition has been kept alive. In every year, on the anniversary of the Polytechnic uprising, there are meetings in schools where, despite the fact that there is distortion, there's no explanation who led the uprising and so on and so forth. But the tradition is there. School children, generation after generation, learn that the way we won our freedom and workers won their rights, the right to have a trade union, the right to have left-wing parties, that was won through an uprising, through going out in the streets, through striking and demonstrating. And that's an important part of the tradition that has been kept alive. If we come to more recent years, when the wave of radicalization of the last 15 years started with Genoa, the demonstration against the G8, when the Greek contingents to go to Genoa was leaving the country, opinion polls showed that 53% of the population were supporting those that were going to demonstrate against the G8. When war broke out, 2003, there were continuous demonstrations from February 2003 until June 2003. Practically every day there was an anti-war demonstration. 3 or 4 years later, 2006, 2007, there was a student revolt. Most of the colleges were occupied. So people who were involved in these struggles are active in the fight back today. And that's part of the explanation why there is such a militant fight back in Greece. The other aspect that we have to understand is that people are angry for good reasons because of the crisis and the attacks. People are militant because they have these traditions, but at the same time they are moving forward politically. Their ideas are changing. And this is, we can see this very clearly and easily by comparing the election results. We had European elections 5-6 weeks ago. If we go back to 2009, the previous European election, the two leading parties, the Tories of New Democracy and the Labour-like PASOK, they had a combined vote of 69%. In this election, now, they were down to 30%. That's a swing of 39 percentage points. massive. PASOK has collapsed. Their share of the vote was 8%. They used to be the ruling party for most of this 40-year period since the collapse of the junta, and now they are just a junior partner with 8% in the government. The Tories were also down. In the European election, they are trailing Syriza by 4 percentage points. So most people say, right, this is an indication that come the general election, Syriza will be the winner. There was a rise for the far right, but we have to keep it in proportion. Of these 39 percentage points that moved away from the leading parties, only 5% went to the far right. The rest went to the left. So when you think of Greece, right, Golden Dawn is a threat, but the massive shift in the ideas of people has been to the left. So the real question is, will Syriza deliver? This is what's on people's minds. Most people take it for granted that the general election, whenever it's called, it's not clear that there's going to be a presidential election in Greece next spring, and the government parties do not have a presidential majority in Parliament. Parliament elects the president. They need 180 MPs. They have 153. So even if the government does not collapse in the meantime, in the autumn or in winter, there's going to be a general election next spring, because the government will not be able to elect a new president of the republic, and that will lead to a general election. So within the next 12 months, people expect that there will be a change of government in Greece to the left. And this is why I say, in most people's minds now is, what will it mean, a victory for Syriza in the polls? Will they deliver on people's expectations that are so high? Well, the signs for that questions are not good. The leadership of Syriza has been moving to the right very, very consistently over the past couple of years. Since they had their electoral success in 2012, when we had parliamentary elections, they have been the official opposition, and they have been shifting their attitude towards the center, towards the right. At that time, in 2012, most people in Greece, but also commentators throughout Europe, were saying that Syriza is a party of the radical left. Some were saying it's a party of the extreme left. That was proved wrong. We were saying at the time that Syriza is a left reformist formation. Nowadays, it's not so left reformist. Let's examine first the questions of substance, not on the questions of, I'll come to the question of tactics, but on the question of what the government will do. On the question of debt, that is the major question in Greek society. 2 or 3 years ago, Syriza was promising that if they win the election, there will be an audit commission that will examine whether that debt is legal, how much of the debt is illegal, so that it can be cancelled. That was a promise that had an echo with many, many people, because most people realize that the pressure of austerity comes from trying to pay off the debt. Now this promise has been scrapped. The leading spokesperson for economics on the leadership of Syriza has said that well, maybe 5% of the debt is illegal and can be written off. We will have to pay off 95% of the debt. This is terrible, because the size of the debt is crushing the economy. 95% of the debt will still be huge. It will mean huge pressure to make cuts. The reason why this is happening is that the Greek debt was restructured back in 2012. The restructuring meant that the European banks that were the holders of Greek debt were saved, but Greece was not saved. They saved the banks. The debt was transferred to the central banks. The European Central Bank is the main holder of Greek debt nowadays. It was taken off private banks and held by the central bank. And that is putting pressure on Syriza that you cannot write off debt that you owe to the European Central Bank. It's a central flaw in the politics of Syriza that they are committed to negotiating what will happen with the Greek debt within the European Union. It is a main plank of the program that we have to respect the commitments of Greece to the European Union. And therefore, that means that the promise of cancelling the debt or even having an audit commission, what they say now is that we are hoping that the European Union will initiate a European-wide investigation of public debt, and within this process there will be probably some relief for Greek debt. Now this sounds like pie in the sky, because the previous example they cite is at the end of the Second World War, when there was an international conference to discuss the German debt. There's no sign that anybody is interested in initiating a process like that. And Syriza is adamant that a Syriza government will not unilaterally move a process like that. So they are confined in there, and with a position that we have to pay back 95% of the debt. That effectively means a continuation of cuts. The sort of thing that we are going through today in Greece. The health service, the schools, the pension funds, these are the main areas where the cuts are most savage, and therefore this will continue. So the commitment to negotiating within the European Union was shown by Alexis Tsipras when he backed the presidency of Jean-Claude Juncker for the European Commission. Now, he didn't have to do that. Jean-Claude Juncker is a Tory. He was the Prime Minister of Luxembourg through the Tory party for, I don't know, 25 years. He was the head of the Euro Working Group, the body that imposed the bailout on Greece. He's a hated figure in Greece. The Tory government is trying to paint him as a friend of Greece. They say the bailout saved the country, so Jean-Claude Juncker is somebody who saved Greece. But the left have no reason to accept rubbish like that. Despite that, because of the commitment to a process through the European Union, and as a token symbol that Syriza is fighting to reform the European Union, they supported Jean-Claude Juncker for president of the Commission. The argument was that the European Conservative Party led the polls in the European elections. So the candidate supported by that party has a mandate to lead the Commission. So the European Union is being democratized because Juncker is becoming president. If you believe that, well, but that's how Syriza is behaving these days. So this is shown also on the question of everyday struggle and tactics. Syriza is becoming more and more openly electoralist. Everything has to be subordinated to the next general election. On everyday struggles, the question that is being asked is this a vote winner or is it a vote loser? They don't consider what are the rights and strengths of a movement or a strike. So, for example, teachers tried to go on all-out strike twice last year. They had mass meetings in local branches of the teachers' union, and the participation was phenomenal. Most people say, even people my age, say they've never seen teachers' meetings as massive as that. They voted 90% for an all-out strike against cuts in schools. The strike never took place because the leadership of the union is controlled by Syriza. And they said, this strike is not going to be very popular. Parents are going to be against their children staying out of school because the teachers are on all-out strike. So forget it. This is an indication of what it means shifting to the right. Even in electoral terms, when it came to, along with the European elections, we had local government elections in Greece. So the selection of candidates was a confrontation between right and left inside Syriza. Tsipras, who is the leader, selected candidates that were so right-wing that there was a revolt against them. When I say right-wing, for leader of the district of Western Macedonia, he chose a TV personality that was openly racist. He had made comments about leading Greek politicians being anti-Semitic comments, I don't have to repeat. Despite that, Tsipras approved that he should run as lead the ticket of Syriza in that district. There was a rank and file revolt, and he had to take the candidate back. Another example in Thrace, where there is a Turkish minority inside Greece. He chose as the leading candidate a woman that was implicated with the Greek secret services. So there was again an open revolt, especially from Syriza members of the minority. They said at a meeting, at a selection meeting, that no Turkish person in Thrace would vote for a candidate like that. They were snubbed. There were people who said, okay, never mind, the Turks will not vote, but the Greeks will vote for this woman, which was ridiculous. So, these are signs of the shift to the left. To the right. To the right, sorry. I was going to say that the previous promise, in 2012, Syriza was talking about a government of the left for the first time in ages in Greece. Nowadays, they don't talk about a government of the left. They talk about a coalition government that will be democratic, patriotic, and progressive. It means it will include people who are part of the Tories. There are many splinter groups from the Tories because they are collapsing, and Syriza is considering that some of them may be part of their coalition. I don't think I have to continue in this. I think that I have given enough indications of the problems that are developing. So, is there a fight back against this? And the answer is yes. The first thing that we have to be clear about is that despite the expectations of an electoral victory that usually dump down strikes. People think that, okay, in a few months' time, we're going to vote, the Tories will be out, Syriza will be in, there's no point in organizing now, we have to organize for the election campaign. This is not happening. People are continuing the fight back. The teachers that were not able to have an all-out strike are organizing meetings to disrupt the process of sacking 15% of the workforce. The Troika has imposed on the Greek government a condition that if they are going to continue to give the bailout funds to Greek banks, the Greek civil service has to be reduced by 15%. So the government says, okay, we need a fig leaf for this. We can't just say we'll sack 15% of teachers, hospital workers, local government workers, civil service and so on. They say we will test the workforce and see who is fit to be in their job and who is not. But the end result is known beforehand. 15% will be judged not to be fit. Now, obviously, this is a fraud, and this process is being blocked by people involved. There are teachers organizing rallies and meetings whenever this testing process tries to go ahead, and they disrupt them. There's been no meeting to select the 15% that is supposedly useless in the schools. The same thing is happening in the hospitals. There's been a revolt throughout the National Health Service in Greece, where people say we will not submit the necessary papers for this process to go ahead. The mood is perhaps best summed up by what's happening with the ERT workers, the people who worked on public television, public broadcasting. ERT is the equivalent of the BBC in Greece. The government shut it down last June, and the workers responded by occupying the place. Occupying the place is actually the whole network throughout Greece, not just the central building in Athens, but local radio stations, TV stations, and so on. They were evicted by the police last autumn from the central building in Athens, but they are continuing the fight back. In this June, on the anniversary of 1 year of their struggle, they had a mass rally outside the central building, and it was huge, and everybody on the left, you know that uniting the Greek left is not an easy thing to do. No matter how much you argue about the united front and that struggles must unite people, the Communist Party is extremely sectarian. They never work with Syriza. But on the demonstration to celebrate 1 year of struggle of the ERT workers, the first speaker was the General Secretary of the Communist Party, the second speaker was Alexis Tsipras, the third speaker was from Andasia. So the left was united because they realized, even the leaderships that are very sectarian, realized that this struggle is very popular with Greek workers. Everybody wants the ERT workers to win, to get back their jobs, the ERT to be reopened with everybody coming back. So this will be actually one of the testing points of a Syriza government, whether they will reopen ERT and reinstate people in their jobs. Because the fight back is continuing, we are confident that a Syriza government will have strong left-wing opposition. This is what Andasia is trying to build. The Greek SWP is part of this coalition that's called Andasia. It means rebellion in Greek. It's a coalition of the anti-capitalist left. We're in this together with people who have broken from the Communist Party and other groups. And there's a large layer of people who looked towards Andalusia as a left-wing force against the compromises of the Syriza leadership. This was shown very clearly during the elections. In the local government elections, 130,000 people voted for Andalusia candidates. In the European election, that number was down to 40,000, because in the European election, what was at stake was whether Syriza would be leading the polls against the Tories. So many people who voted for Syriza were tactical voters, let me put it that way. Their sympathies are to the left of Syriza, but they appreciate that Syriza winning the government is an important fight. Now this layer of people, the election result is only an indication. It's much, much more wider. If we go to trade union elections, then this trend is even stronger. I mentioned at the beginning the Confederation of Civil Service Unions, ADV. In the executive of the union, there are 4 Syriza seats, 2 Communist Party seats, 2 Andalusia seats. So the relation of forces in trade union elections shows that there are many, many people who are to the left of the leadership of Syriza, and they are looking towards Andalusia for a fight back, for continuing the struggle, for opposing the compromises that their leadership is preparing. This is why we are hopeful that this trend will continue if Syriza gets in office. We will be able to organize a left opposition based on the demands that people want their jobs back, they want their wages back, they want their pensions back, the hospitals and schools. So a Syriza government must deliver. And on the basis of that, we say the only way that this can happen, yes, we have a broad program. We say cancel the debt, this is the central demand, but at the same time we say, okay, reopen the school, reopen the hospital, give people their jobs back, and organize strikes and demonstrations, even if we have a left-wing government, a Syriza government. That's the way forward, that's the way. An electoral victory for the left will translate into actual victories for workers. It's not given that a victory, an electoral victory for the left will translate for victories for the workers. We have to make sure this happens, and that will happen through struggle. So we are inviting people to rally around Andalusia, because Andalusia is the force that will organize this kind of movement. So building an anti-capitalist left independent of Syriza is very, very important. It's crucial in the coming months. It will make the difference between Greece going the French way, where the left in government is a disaster, and who benefits the far right. We don't want to see this happening in Greece, but we are not just waiting to see what will happen after the general election. We are organizing in the here now, and the Greek SWP is central to this fight.
Well, I think the most obvious thing about Syriza is that it is a party which says it's going to stay in the European Union, so it's pro-EU, it's pro-Euro, and it just wants to renegotiate the memorandum, the austerity measures. That's why, I'm from the International Communist League, we said no vote to Syriza in the 2012 election. We called for a vote to the KKE, because the KKE was standing independently of any bourgeois parties, and it was also saying no to the European Union, no to the Euro, and no to voting Syriza. So that was a good reason to call for a vote to the KKE. We didn't do that this time around because they have a wretched position on Golden Dawn and fighting against fascism, which they refused to do. So we didn't vote for the KKE this time around. But having said that, I think that the position of Andalusia towards Golden Dawn is actually not that much better, because what they do is say, I mean, in Britain, it is parliamentary cretinous to say, don't vote Nazi. It's not a question of voting. And in Greece, to say that, where, I mean, the entire parliamentary corrupt system is in collapse. So to go out and tell people, actually, you know, what you need to do is to get back into that and vote for people, that's really not the question. It's also promoting illusions in the capitalist state to call for prosecutions of Golden Dawn. Because, in actual fact, you know what the state is in Greece? About 75% of the cops are supporters of Golden Dawn. So we don't call on the state to do those kinds of things. You know, so I think Addasia really has been a tail on Syriza in actual fact, because although you say, oh yeah, they're moving towards the right, even though you also say that this was actually a vote towards the left. So Addasia is moving towards the right, but that didn't stop, Syriza's moving towards the right, but that didn't stop Addasia and the Socialist Workers Party from calling for a vote to Syriza in the second round in the recent local elections, you know. So, in actual fact, I think that Addasia's own program really is just a series of reforms which it calls anti-capitalist program. But actually what's needed in Greece is workers' revolution. And of course that doesn't just come overnight, but you do have to have a party that wants to fight, to fight for workers' revolution. You have a look around this room. It's all fight the right, kick out the Tories. What does that mean? We get back to Labour government? Well, the last time around, 97, the SWP was over the moon for Tony Blair, and we know where that ended.
But comrades, can you just say who you are and where you're from?
Yeah. All right. I'm Paul. I'm from Germany. I'm working there in the Greek Solidarity, and I'm a member of Ford International. I have a question concerning this right turn of Syriza you were talking about. You were talking about that Andasia is the force to fight against this. As far, I didn't hear anything from you what you think about cooperation with these forces inside Syriza, the left platform, for instance, and as I tell you, I have good experience, and I and my group, we cooperate with DEA, for instance, and I think they are very good comrades. So you didn't talk about how you cooperate with these comrades, what you see as the problems of cooperation, what are the things you have in common. And as far as I know, some guy informed me that during the last weeks there must have been something like a declaration of a more middle strata of Syriza, of functionaries of Syriza which were so far in favor of Tsipras, and they made, it must have been 50 or some more prominent figures who made a declaration which was very critical towards the politics done by Tsipras. So I would like to hear from you how you evaluate these things, because you are of course closer to it than I am. And okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing, it's a question to you which I always wanted to know, but I don't find an answer in the bourgeois press. I would like to know how much money does the Greek state pay in debt to international institutions annually. They're talking about this primary profit of the budget, but they never talk about how much the Greek state pays to international institutions.
Riyad Desai. I'm from South Africa, the Democratic Left Front, and I think our equivalent in Greece would be Andousia. And yes, just like this meeting, we have some of the Orthodox Trotskyists coming to ours, and they bind the 3 volumes of the Communist International together, and with that big book they try and hit people over the head very hard to try and recruit them. I think the key thing, just to respond to the comrade, our understanding is through struggles workers learn, and that's why we get involved in anti-capitalist coalitions and attempt to lead those organisations and influence them as much as we can to engage and fight back wherever we can. And in South Africa, that has meant that we are the leading force, political force, inside the Platinum strike, which went on for 5 months. We are the only serious force now delivering solidarity for the 220,000 metal workers of South Africa, who, through our solidarity work with them and our support for their initiative that they're trying to catalyse the Workers' Party, have opened up their trade union structures to us. With those sorts of politics, comrades, you wouldn't get in the front door of any trade union. But I think we do have some serious questions. As comrades around the world that are involved in international, these coalitions, these networks, because essentially anti-capitalism isn't enough. The anti-capitalism has become so widespread, and it's become often quite vacuous. We need, and we've been pushing, and just recently we've managed to push our coalition stroke united front into a sort of sharper socialist direction. And that's been critical for us because we need to operate more, increasingly more like a political party. That means flexible and fast to a very fast-moving situations. And we can't constantly rely on these numerous assemblies and consultation and democratic processes, because by the time we've finished coming to a position on something that's facing us as an organisation, as a movement, the struggle's over. So I wondered what the position, you know, how the Greek comrades were dealing with that over there.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Panos for the really clear introduction. Also wanted to thank the first speaker for bringing up a good discussion point. I just fundamentally disagree. I'm from the Dutch sister organization of the SWP, International Socialist, and I think that actually, the first speaker mentioned that Antarja is tailing Syriza. Well, our experiences in the Dutch context are actually a bit the same. I think it's a good description, but after that it kind of ends with the analysis from me, and I want to make my own point, which is we don't really have much of a choice. We're with 100 people, and yes, we are for worker revolution, but yeah, we wouldn't indeed get into the front door if we ended it at that. So my basic question would be also to you. You said united front tactics are important but difficult to build. I'm really curious what you're doing on that front in general, and what the lessons are to be learned from that. Because in the Netherlands, we kind of face that we're a very small group. We don't have a lot of influence on the main social democratic party, the Socialist Party, but they are playing the biggest role in the fight against cutbacks, which is actually, well, not a very big fight, but they're hesitantly, and people are voting for them and are looking towards them, etc. But they've also formed coalitions within the local governments. and actually with liberal parties. So personally I'm a bit afraid that people will vote left, then get disappointed because the left is so reformist, then look either towards fascism or basically towards a sort of anti-political attitudes and more autonomous sympathies. So I was wondering, United Front tactics, we really need them. We sent them a letter with our concern in it. What are you doing? Please organize with us on the streets. They responded to that, and we tried to build up a base of people who are critical and want to organize on the street, etc.
Okay, I've got a couple of queries actually for yourself, Panos. First thing that I've been wondering about is there a threat of some kind of Cornwall-style putsch if Syriza get in, disappoint the population? And linked to that is, how strong is the deep state, the structures of the judiciary, particularly the army, the colonels, sections of the police? Are we in a situation that Gramsci was describing in the prison notebooks where the state is gelatinous, like Russia, or is it holding firm? And are those structures going to hold through? What would be your assessment of that? What are the conversations on the ground? And linked to that, the second question I've got is, I hear a lot of reports of a solidarity economy, people sort of taking over things, running of things, food provision, those sorts of things. Is that going on? Is that a progressive movement? What's your assessment of that? Just to cut through some of the different reports really and to get your sense of what that's all doing. So it's really just those sort of questions really I'd like to ask you.
I just wanted to talk about the anti-fascist movement really, because I think that one of the most inspiring things here is actually seeing in Greece the comrades being at the heart of a broad movement that can both confront the fascists on the streets and put that movement on the streets, but also challenge them in terms of them trying to move from the streets to gain respectability in the elections, because we know how much further that's gone in Greece than it has in this country, and I think that's a warning to us, but it's also an inspiration to us that comrades are actually doing that in Greece, because it does actually matter how many votes people get. It does actually matter that we say to people not to vote for the Nazis and not to allow them to grow in terms of that respectability. And when we organised the demonstrations here on March the 22nd against racism, that was part of something that came out of a big demonstration inside Greece itself. I think for us it's fantastically important, because that whole idea that a left-wing government can get elected in the wake of disillusionment with that government, and you can say whether it's a left government moving right, the question is how people are thinking about it. When people are thinking about it and looking at it and hoping for something that's going to deliver for them, and the disillusionment that sets in when that doesn't happen, actually there has to be a force there, and therefore it's extremely inspiring to see what the comrades are doing, both around trying to stop the fascists now, which is very important for us in terms of what we do around unite against fascism, but also around stand up to UKIP to take up those arguments that we don't blame immigrants for what's happening. That's a really important process that I think that we can learn from, because we need two things in place, don't we, for when that happens. One is we need the broadest movement possible that says that immigrants are welcome here, and they're not going to let them take the scapegoating for the failures of a left move, of a government that people have put their hopes in. I suspect the hopes that people will put in a Labour government will be slightly less than they're putting into Syriza, but nevertheless that process will take place. So we need both the broadest movement against that, but we also need revolutionaries at the heart of an alternative that keeps the struggle up, that doesn't allow the existence of a reformist government to hold the struggle back. So I think for us here in Britain, it's very inspiring to see that that is actually happening, and thank heavens there is some revolutionary socialist organisation in Greece.
I'm from Germany, active in the Marx 21 network, and one of my main political work in the last year has been organising European migrants in Berlin. Because one of the untold part of the Euro crisis is that lots and lots of good activists can't afford to live in Spain and Greece anymore and come into other cities, and we're trying to get them involved in local politics. And in the last year there's been both a Syriza group and an anti-Syria group formed in Berlin, and it means that we're involved in quite a lot of discussions with the people there, where it becomes obvious that both to the Greeks but also the wider European left as a whole, that Syriza does carry a lot of hope, that it's not right just to see them just as like all the other people. Tsipras made a speech at the last conference of Die Linke, a very radical, inspiring speech, and it's important to say that actually, in the first place, a win for Syriza in the election would be a good thing, and not just automatically would lead to demoralisation of people. That actually, the hopes of a lot of people, the hopes of a lot of people, if Syriza don't manage it, will be dispersed, and there's a lot more danger of dissolution if Syriza just burn. At the same time, it's important in terms of discussions with the people we're having in Syriza and so on, it's important not that these discussions not to have on an abstract level as to Syriza is a sellout and it will sell out sometime in the future, but to test them in practice. And so the effect of seeing what the Syriza is going to do in government is much better in terms of the concrete argument about reform or revolution. Until then, people will a lot more wait until well, maybe Syriza will do something for us in the future. At the same time, it's important now to see about the drift to the right. It's something which we get not very much information at the moment. It would be good if Panos could say where in English or German, but in English language where we can get information in terms of having the discussion concretely. The people in Syriza, but also the people in Die Linke are pretty much uncritical towards Tsipras, and it's very difficult to have discussions with them without actually concretely saying, okay, what is happening, what's new. We can come once a year and hear Panos here, but how can we inform ourselves in the meantime about what are the concrete discussions going on in Greece and what's going on?
Sorry, I'm not going to be able to call everyone who's put their hands up. I think I can probably get in a couple more and then see what's...
Yeah, I'm from Scotland, and it's good to be part of this international meeting. Took a little while, but we got there. Okay, I think a really, really important discussion, comrades, in lots of ways, because I think the example of Syriza is not just about Greece, it's an international example, and I want to say a little bit about that. And just to respond to the first comrade, there's a wonderful pamphlet by a guy called Lenin, called Left-Wing Communism. And really you should read, because really for us, socialism is a self-emancipation of the working class. It's not the little groups substitute themselves. So really for us, the key question, how do we win the massive workers who are not revolutionary to revolutionary ideas? And in that context, the fact that we saw the votes that we saw in Greece and in Spain against the context of the rise of far-right fascist parties across Europe was wonderful. Right? Point one. Point two, it was not an accident. That victory was on the basis of the level of working class struggle in Greece. The reality is, of course, that across much of Europe there is a much lower level of struggle, and I think that therefore leads in two directions. It either leads in terms of the focus on electoral parties, or it leads on a focus on social movements. And I just want to give a little example of where that can lead to. In Scotland 3 years ago, we lost a large group of very, very talented members of this party, 40 to 50, organisers, etc., 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 who set up a group called the International Socialist Group. It's very interesting to look at where they are now, because essentially the ISG have moved in two related directions. One is to throw themselves into the movement for Scottish independence, and we also in SWP Scotland have also thrown ourselves into that movement, but we have tried not to sow illusions in that movement. We've remained involved in every single struggle that's going on. We've remained involved in the anti-fascist struggle, in every strike movement and so on. We seek to grow the party. By contrast, it is now a regular feature of the ISG comrades now only participate within the independence movement, and regularly, for example, on their platforms will speak for Business for Scotland. Okay? So in a sense there's been a real shift in that direction. But also very, very importantly, one of the leading members in an article, you can read it on the website, recently said what he calls the need for an electoral party. The need for an electoral party, in which he argues quite uncritically that the only way that we can bring about any change or win legitimacy in a society is actually through winning elections, and that has to be the central focus. Now, what unites both that focus on social movements on the one hand and the focus on the electoral party on the other is a complete abandonment of any notion that the working class can change society. Complete abandonment of that idea. And I think in that kind of situation, we do know, we know where Syriza will go. We've seen it in South Africa, we've seen it elsewhere with similar organisations. As revolutionaries, whether it's in the struggle for independence in Scotland, whether it's in Greece, our task is to throw ourselves into these movements and argue, but at the same time we emphasise both the central role of the working class and above all the need for an independent revolutionary party which involves itself in social movements and electoral organisation, but whose focus is on the working class.
Right. On the question of how much the Greek state pays for the debt, the level of interest payments in the Greek budget currently is 6 billion euros. Now, that's an amount it's roughly half what the Greek state spends on social services. So that gives you an idea how big the burden is. Before the restructuring, the interest payments have gone up to 12 billion euros. And even the European bankers realize that this is not sustainable. Now they think 6 billion is sustainable. But the reality is that this cannot continue. No way. Even if there are arrangements to bring down by 1 billion or so, down to 5 billion, this is the sort of thing that they're debating now. It is a vague promise from the European Union that maybe if Greece continues to implement all the austerity attacks that they demand, they will do something to bring the level down a little bit. But again, this will not be sustainable, because it means that the Greek budget must produce a surplus year after year for the next 20-25 years. Not a balanced budget, a surplus budget to service these payments. And with no prospect of growth, with an economy that has shrunk, this kind of burden is terrible. Either there is a policy that will strike down that, cancelling the debt, refusing to pay interest, or any kind of government will be forced into cuts. This is what this kind of figure means. On the question of the deep state in Greece, and whether there's a danger that if there is a progressive government there might be a coup, this is not on the cards. The ruling class in Greece are in a mess. The parties through which they ruled for years and years have collapsed, and they are so connected with the state that this reflects also on state institutions. The person that was selected by the present Tory Prime Minister in Greece to be Cabinet Secretary was found to be in talks with Golden Dawn, and that became public, and he had to resign. And that gives you an indication of the sort of turmoil that is happening at that level. I don't think they are in a position to threaten Syriza with a military coup or the secret services or whatever. So the question is, what will happen with the people fighting back. Now, the first person that spoke said that Andalusia has the wrong position on Golden Dawn. I think that's a joke. If anybody making that statement in Greece would be just laughed out of the meeting. The force that has led the anti-fascist movement is the Greek SWP and Andalusia in Greece. We initiated the Greek anti-fascist coalition back in 2009, before the rise of Golden Dawn, on the basis that there is a threat for a fascist threat in Greece. There's a separate meeting on Golden Dawn, so I won't expand on this. But it is very, very clear and very respected by people across the spectrum, not just from Syriza, but also from the Communist Party that is very, very sectarian. Even Communist Party people say that, yes, this is right. You have played a crucial role in starting the ball rolling against the Nazis. So, on the question of tailing Syriza, this is a standard accusation by the Communist Party in Greece. The Communist Party is very sectarian. They spend their time denouncing Syriza and denouncing Andalusia. And part of the denunciation for Andalusia is that we are tailing Syriza. Well, in a sense it is true, right? We can openly admit that the fights that we have led were central to creating the shift to the left in Greek society. We were part of this, and therefore lots of people who are voting Syriza have been shifted to the left through our work. So in that sense, yes, we have contributed to the fact that now Syriza leads the Tories in the polls. At the same time, we are independent of Syriza. And that may seem as a contradiction. Many people say, if you see that there is a shift to the left, that there is a prospect that millions of people expect that there will be a Syriza government, then why are you outside? Why do you stand in elections independently of Syriza? Well, because this is the way the United Front works. It's contradictory. It's not just, okay, you are the big party, you lead, whatever you do, we accept. No, revolutionaries have to take initiatives. We work together, but at the same time we keep our independence. And this is what we've been trying to do, concretely. This is also part of the answer to the question that was posed on endless discussion in the anti-capitalist milieu. Sometimes this can be, by the time a position is reached, the struggle is over. This is a fair criticism of what's happening in these circles. I think it's based on the experience of the comrades in South Africa. We have similar experience in Greece. How do we deal with this? Well, we are part of the coalition. We are part of Andalusia. But that never stops us from initiating struggle when we think that Andalusia is slow in reaching a decision. We launched KFR, the movement against the Nazis, without consensus in Andalusia. Andalusia was won to the anti-fascist struggle after we had initiated this movement. And this is, I think, the contradictory way that revolutionaries need to operate. If we think that the discussion is endless, well, we convince people not just through discussion, but through example, through struggle. If a successful initiative is launched, then people realize that, okay, the discussion has to end, now we have to move forward. This doesn't just apply to the anti-fascist work. It applies to strikes also. I mentioned at the beginning the strike last week that was led by the women cleaners. There is a coordination against redundancies, that unites rank-and-file trade union bodies across the civil service, the hospitals, the teachers, the cleaners, and so on. We initiated that. That's part of our United Front work. It's not always accepted by everybody in Syriza. There are people in Syriza who are involved, but there are also people who are say, oh, this is a far left initiative. They follow the leadership. So it is contradictory, but at the same time it is effective. It means that revolutionaries are working alongside people who are influenced by reformist ideas. This is part of why it is important, but also it's important in terms of the effectiveness in the struggle. Without the coordination like that, the cleaners would not be at the head of the demonstration. They would not be accepted by the hospital workers as leaders of their contingent. By bringing them together at the rank and file level, we are creating these openings. And this is, I think, how we should view the question of the United Front and how we can move it forward despite the difficulties that exist, either through sectarianism or through right-wing reformism. On the question of people who organize kitchen soups, solidarity, this sort of thing is happening, and the people involved are good activists. But when it comes to how you generalize this, they are often influenced by Syriza ideas. And Syriza ideas are that there are no funds to fund public services. So let's have the initiative of people to do something about it. Now that's not a solution. The movements are progressive. The people who are involved, doctors who provide services for uninsured people, for poor people, they do this out of their willingness to support the working class. But the general solution is that we must reopen the closed hospitals. We must bring back to their jobs the hospital workers that have lost them. It's not just organizing a little center with volunteers. We will never cover the needs of the working class through the work of volunteers. We have to fight for the state to provide these services, and this is a central demand on a Syriza government. We say, okay, support the volunteers, there's no problem with that, but they are no substitute for restoring the National Health Service, restoring the schools, and so on and so forth. So, the final thing on cooperating with the left platform inside Syriza. There is a left platform inside Syriza, and they have important positions. In the Central Committee of Syriza, they represent something like 30% when it comes to crucial decisions. They can bring together. And we always make sure that we address our initiatives to this current. Marxism in Athens took place just a few days ago. And one of the meetings that we organized was with the leader of the left platform in Syriza, so that we could have a debate on what issues we could fight together, what initiatives we could fight together, obviously against the Nazis, but also on other questions, despite the fact that they are in Syriza and we are in Andasia. It went down very well. It was also attended by a person that represented the other current that is involving. It is true, a comrade said that apart from the left platform, there is an initiative of 50 people who used to be supporters of Tsipras in the leadership and now are shifting to the left. This is happening, and it is an indication that the rank and file are to the left of Tsipras. We invited this woman to Marxism, and she was part of the debate. So the leader of the left platform, a woman from the 50-odd people who are now critical of Tsipras, and one of us having this discussion. So we'll make sure that these people are involved in all these fronts that I was trying to describe. Sometimes they are as a current. Most of the time, it is people from that current that support the initiatives on their own, and this is important. So, I think the final point has to be about building an independent organization. A comrade from South Africa posed the question of endless discussion and so on. We are part of Andasia. We are part of United Front's campaigns and initiatives, and sometimes it is difficult to win the argument inside all these groupings. This is one more reason why you need an independent revolutionary organization. Without SEC, without the sister organization of the SWP in Greece, it would not be possible to have all these groups and campaigns take the initiatives, twist and turn as the situation has moved. There were huge illusions in Syriza in 2012. Now they're going down after the experience of the last 2 years as the leadership is shifting to the right. It's now easier to involve people from Syriza in opposition to the Syriza leadership. But to do that, we've had to go through years of very patient political explaining and very, very, very robust fighting for the initiatives to take off the ground. Now, you cannot do that as an individual. You have to be part of an organization. This is the role of revolutionaries. I think in the Greek context, we are providing a good example of the need to build the international tendency across the world.